I want to talk about the issue that's been on my heart for a few months now. I've been asking myself, what does true worship really mean in my life and in other people's lives? Generally, my life, because I need to know what that means first, right? I do know that a few decades we've been kind of hyper focused about doing these activities related to God, right? Coming church on time, serving, or doing Bible studies and going to worship or whatever capacity you do, that kind of became the center of our Christian walk. And if you do a lot of those things, if you pray a lot, if you go to morning prayer, if you serve as an elder, that somehow gave us that looks of a good Christian. And I think in some ways it does. I've been wrestling with this topic about what does true worship really mean? Because we were so hyper focused about doing activities related to God that we now have allergic reaction. If we tell people you have to be on time, you have to serve in certain capacity, we automatically think the word legalism, right? Me too. Like, I really didn't like the fact that you're boxed in, that you have to do certain things. So, like back in the days when maybe 10, 20 years ago, doing devotions at a certain time was very important, or coming to church and being in the church worship was very important. And because of the legalism and we're allergic to that, and I think many of us went to the other extreme where the theme is come as you are. If you're late, it's okay. If you're messed up, it's okay. And then I do actually resonate more to that side than legalism for sure. But because we've been too comfortable, in my opinion, or I've been too comfortable with the fact that come as you are, I lost that sense of holiness and reverence of going to God. Let's talk about Sunday worship. I think in the past, we made this worship to be very legalistic, and you need to, no matter what you do, you need to be there, sit there, and then you check off the to-do list as a spiritual activity, then you're good to go. That was how general public kind of believed. And now we fight against that by thinking that it is okay to be late to church. It is okay to do those things. And I still believe so. I don't think you have to be all well kept to go to church. You have to be all ready to go. I don't believe in that. I think Jesus already knew how well we put ourselves together. We'll be quite not in a good shape compared to God's standard. So I don't think that was what God was looking for, perfectionism or being in a certain way before coming to God. But when I look at my life, because of that too much comfort focused faith, I go to God with too much of a casual posture. Let me say this, like I would go on Sundays, not thinking too much about going to worship on Sundays. I am pastor's wife, so I'll be there on time for sure. But other than that, I think about, do I really go to church on Sunday to worship God with reverence, with excitement, with joy that I cannot wait? During the week, I cannot wait to go to church on Sunday. Do I live like that? Because the worship is a place where it gives me life and gives me joy. And honestly, it really didn't. I was examining my life and it really didn't give me that reverence. So one time I went to this conference and I actually saw Francis Chan. If some of you guys don't know, Francis Chan is one of the most famous Christian writer who wrote Crazy Love, and he really loves God. And I really enjoy just reading his life stories. But I met him pretty close. I was sitting in the front where speakers sit and never met him. I never spoke to him, and yet my heart was pounding. I know it's so silly. My eyes kind of met him at a certain point when we were worshiping God. And then I felt so embarrassed. And he is, if you think about it, he's not like a celebrity, like Hollywood celebrity. He's just, another Christian brother who happened to love God very much. And I was like thinking, if I were to meet, let's say on our Sunday worship, Brad Pitt came to our service. I really used to like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie because they're very beautiful people physically and they act well. If I walk into my church tomorrow, which is Sunday, and then see them sitting there in the front, how would my posture change? I know that my posture will change. Either I'll be awkward, I'll be like, oh my gosh, they're here. My behavior would change. That's what I'm talking about. If your favorite basketball player, I don't know, superstar, suddenly came to visit your church, how would you act? A mere human being who is famous coming to worship, you will completely change our behavior. And I think about like we're worshiping God, God of the universe, Father who loves us, who gave himself for us. And then we say with our words that he is our everything, right? Yet we go to church so casually that it is just one of the things that we could kind of do it or not do it. And I'm not really bashing people who are late or who don't go to church. It's not that. It's really about looking at myself and saying, am I having that posture of worship that God desires in me? And then how does it show in my life on Sunday? Apart from the role that I am playing, a pastor's wife. Would I go there if there's no AC or heater, right? And in many countries in this world, I know that there are people who are true worshipers. And I desire when I see that, when I hear about them, I desire that in my life because true worship really gives me life. What about you? Were you ever in a worship setting where you feel like you are that person in the universe, you and God alone, right? Even though you're in the midst of the crowd. When you're in a true worship, you don't really care about what people say. So you might be self-conscious about how you look when you raise your hands and things. But when you're really in it with God, if you're locked in with God, you don't care about that. At least I didn't care about how silly I sounded because I can't really sing. My voice cracks when I sing. I really didn't care if people saw me, raising my hand and I was wearing kind of funny pants. I really didn't care. And I know that when the true worship comes in, something changes in our life, in my life. But the posture that I have, I think I bring it to the Lord and I don't think it's really enough for me to give him that type of worship on Sunday. I sometimes see people casually coming in and sitting down, going in, and it breaks my heart. And I question, what if we were to see God as who he is with reverence and with the holiness that God intended us to have in worship? I'm not talking about the number of the people in the room. It's the posture, like my own posture, your posture. When you're sitting in that worship, no matter how sermon sucks, right? What is your posture? Like, are you hungry? Am I hungry to be in that place, to meet God? And do I have that desperateness that if I don't meet God this morning during this worship, I'm not going home? And I miss that, honestly. I feel like the comfort that I've been having in this culture, I have kind of let it slip. So today I was reading John 4:23 to 24. Let me read it to you. This is where Samaritan woman meets Jesus and they were talking about the true worship because Samaritan woman learned that true worship was going into the Jerusalem and worshiping God there. And here God essentially kind of changes the whole scenery. Jesus shifts the focus entirely. He explains that the time has come when the true worship is not about physical location, but about worshiping God in spirit. So this was revolutionary because until this moment, people, and at least Samaritans or people around in Israel, thought that only worship that you do is going to that location and doing certain rituals. But Jesus said, because I came, it all changed. And this is so true that it doesn't matter where you're at, right? You don't have to be physically at worshiping place to call it true worship. But what I'm wrestling is when that true worship takes place, that posture will be revealed. Posture of reverence. I want to see that in my life in this new year. I don't want to take God casually and thinking that that casual way of getting to know God will bring change in my life. I know that what God can do is something we can ever imagine in our lives. So I want you to wrestle with me in this section. There's sometimes legitimate times that we are late for church because our children are sick, or we can't go to church because, we have work to do. And I think those are really good. They're okay if I am really worshiping God. I question if God is really the most important person in my life. Let's say we go on a vacation. We've been planning this Cancun vacation for months, pay lots of money. Would you be late for airport? I wouldn't be late. I would be there 2 hours before just to make sure that I'm on the plane on time. Or maybe a concert ticket. My children once had concert ticket they bought 3 months beforehand. They were talking about it for 3 months. They went 4 hours before the concert. That's the posture I'm talking about that I want to see in my life. I want to see myself being excited every Sunday before going to church, even starting on Saturday, Friday, Thursday, to prepare a heart of worship, because I can't wait for what God can do in my life and in my church family's lives. So that's my wrestling part of today. And let me read this blessing prayer for you. May God fill your heart with a renewed sense of His holiness and wonder. As you go forward, may you find yourself drawn into a deeper and more genuine kind of worship, one that just flows naturally from your spirit. I pray that you will be able to find true worship this coming Sunday. Blessings. Until we meet again, right here. Let's show the Papa Pig. A lot of Papa Pigs.
Yeah, I make a hop.
Yeah. Okay. Say bye.
Bye.